Mapu.
Mapu.
Hey there, welcome to Board Game Barrister, our local game shop in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. I'm Andy, and I'm here with Ian, Gordon, Anthony, Elizabeth, and Glenn, and today we're talking Dadada, a crazy game where we've just made up our own language using only 5 syllables. Let's get into it. Welcome to Dadada, a game where you and your group are going to create your own unique language using only sound and image cards and then test how well you know that language. To start the game, we're going to create our language using 5 sounds cards and 13 image cards. We're going to lay those image cards out on the table and then flip the top 2 of our sound cards and start defining what they mean to us. Now it's worth noting, as soon as these first 2 sound cards get flipped, we cannot speak any other language except the one we're defining on the board. So the only sounds you're allowed to make from now on are the sounds you see on these 5 cards. But I'll keep speaking English, because I don't think me just saying Lou and Lee a bunch is actually going to help you learn the game. So now that we have these 2 sound cards on the table, we're going to start assigning different image cards to them and checking in with our fellow players as to whether we think this makes sense. You can do this based on whatever logic comes up in your head. So for instance, my head is seeing a number of different metal objects, and maybe I'm just going to start putting some objects together here and check in with my fellow players. Lee? Of course, they can't say yes or no or anything else like that, but you are allowed to shake your head or nod if you have to, but the more preferred way to say yes to this would be to emphasize your own heartfelt Lee! Now we kinda maybe agree on what Lee means. And whenever we've started to feel like we've got some vague definitions for what these words could start to mean, anybody who wants to can flip another sound off the stack, and we can start applying things into that. And then things get really cool and the language starts to unfold, because anytime you want to, you can start to check in with each other about using a combination of these sounds to define a word. Maybe I turn to my fellow players and I say, Lubong? Which also means that we could start saying things like Lee Bong, or Bong Lee. And we've started to define objects, metal as a concept, flying in flight, but maybe just birds in general. And we're gonna get more sounds off the top until we've got our language sorted. And once we've got all those images kind of assigned to sounds or combination of sounds, we're gonna start trying to use our language. To do this, one player at the table is going to draw a card off of the deck, and they are going to secretly look at that card. And they're gonna try to come up with the sounds in this language that would define this card. I'm gonna hope my fellow players can make the connection if I say that this is Zulu. And then what I'm gonna do before I show this card to anybody is I'm going to draw 5 more picture cards, and I'm going to shuffle all of these cards together and hope my fellow players can pick out the Zulu among them. So I would show these to my fellow players. If they're correct and they agree that this is the Zulu, then we get to put this in our scoring stack and we've gained a point. If they're incorrect, then it goes into a say what pile, and we're trying to avoid getting 2 cards in the say what pile. That's what triggers the end of the game. If they did get this correct, there's a little bit of an added value there too, because now any associations the other players had with this unicorn is going to be connected to the concept of Zulu. And we'll put that in our scoring stack. Then it's the next player around the table's turn to grab an image card and try to define it. And we're gonna keep going around the table until everybody's had a chance to be the communicator once, or until we've got 2 cards in that say what stack. And if you are playing with a lower number of players, like 2 or 3, maybe even 4 players, we wouldn't blame you at all for continuing to play even after everybody had had one chance to be the communicator, just to keep getting to use that new language you've made. My main takeaway as we were playing was that this is way more fun as an exercise to be doing with each other and to make up whatever little extra rules and nuances you want to as you're playing. That makes it a more enriching experience for you as you go. We were coming up with ideas in the course of playing that we thought would be more fun. We made a couple of little changes to when we were going to stop playing and when we felt like we were done with the round. And all I wanted to do when we were done with it was to create a new language and shuffle up and start over again. Because
surely we can do this better next time.
Possibly, and I want to see what other stuff, like you kind of exhaust the ideas that come out of your initial 13 cards by the time you're done with a couple of rounds of this. You've run out of things you can literally say because that's all the syllables you've been given, and I'd be really excited to just try it again and get a whole new language built out of there. And that's the other thing I want to say, is that this is one of the most unique party games I've ever played. I had a great time with it, but separate from that, it is just, I can't compare it to anything else. It is a game where there's a clue giver giving a clue to somebody else, sure, but I've never been at a table where all I want to say is the word no, and I'm not allowed. And like, that's crazy that like, the simplest bits of language all get stripped away from you, and all you're left with is just shouting stuff at each other and hoping your inflection catches, and then putting question marks at the end of things to make people know that you don't believe or agree with them. It was just a really cool experience to be at the table for, and you should totally play it.
Vo Ma Poo.
Vo Ma Poo.
Mapu?
Vo Ma Poo. Vo Ma Poo.
Vo Ma Poo.
Vo Ma Poo?
Who?
J.
Jay.
Javo.
J-Vo.
Yeah, this would be a really great team building exercise because it's hilarious and you can get it wrong. You know, the stakes are very low. It's a game, but it also really starts to show you what biases are you bringing to the table. How are we learning to listen to each other and work together as a team? It's like you said, very unique in that regard.
Building off of what you said a moment ago about this being the way that it's unique, when we were initially reading through the rules, we were like, oh, it's going to feel like Codenames after a moment. But it's really not. And then also our post-game discussion specifically on how would we either make the game keep going, whether we're going to add in extra syllables, or how much further into it can we actually go. I think that there's more depth to the game that can be explored than just playing even once around the table. There's more to it that you can do, stepping outside of the rules.
I do love that they put in the actual rules that after you are done with the game, you have the discussion of what were you thinking?
Yeah.
Oh
when
yeah,
you did
because
It's
because
literally part of the game.
Yeah, it's and it should be, because there are the frustrating things where I'm going how is a pot J?
Yep.
And having that discussion at the end kind of lets you see how they were thinking, which I think in some ways could lead to more interesting plays after that. Because now I'm thinking, okay, I'm seeing a bit how you are interpreting things. I can carry that to the next time we play.
Yeah, because I learned that I interpreted things very literally, this is literal, a pile of coins, a literal B, but a lot of people at the table were thinking, oh, this represents money or wealth, this represents things associated with B, like honey, and I'm like, oh, well, that's
Yeah.
interesting to find out.
Voj.
J.
Voj.
J.
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 Yeah, one of my favorite things to do in party games is the table talk and the banter that you get to have amongst one another. And oftentimes, you really, in this one, you really want to just be like, what are you thinking? It means this, blah, blah, blah. But you can't say any of that in the actual gameplay. Yeah. So you're just yelling poo and ma at each other over and over and pointing at pictures going, T! And nobody knows. You can't fix that interpretation until the end when you get to have that banter and table talk of T-ma, are you kidding? That doesn't mean this. It meant, person or to me, but it meant organic to somebody else or whatever it might be.
Yeah.
So I really like that a lot, that this one forced you into continuing to play the game through every round without having that banter and forced table talk at the end of each person's round and clue giving.
I would say if you're going to play this game, it really hits its stride probably at least 5 players, because by its nature, it's a game about a society creating a language. We were definitely seeing those elements of society shifting and changing language as we went, agreeing and disagreeing with each other, people who were standouts about certain topics but not other ones. If you're playing with 2 or 3 people total, it's probably an interesting experience, but if you fall off on 2 of the syllables and you don't understand each other on those, you don't have that society backing it up to make the language happen, and I think that was a huge benefit to our 6-player game.
There's a ton of cards in here, and the different shaped cards that you have are all over the map, and there's enough overlap that they're interesting. It's all easy line art, but you can tell what it is. You can pull out different ideas from it, and just a ton of variety. Good work went into the selection of clues to give it a selection of art to use.
All right, I think that does it for Dadada. Thank you so much for joining us. We had a really good time making up our own language. Can't wait to do it again, and we appreciate you joining us. Hope you had fun watching. As always, hit that like, leave a comment. We'll get back to you as soon as we can. Subscribe so you can see our videos every single week when we post them, and check out our online store where you will find Dadada and a bunch of other cool stuff. Thanks for joining us this week. We'll see you next time.
Bo.
Bye.